Hello and welcome everybody. Today I'm going to recap day 1 of Magic Camp with all kinds of photos and videos that were taken throughout the day. At the very end of this video, I'm going to share an in-depth discussion on the sealed we did that day, where a few campers are talking about what cards they felt were good and which ones underperformed. So if you would like to check that out, it will be at the very end of this video. Let's get into it. First, Charlie discusses his Goryo's hand.
Basically keeping his hand purely on the back of Frog.
Well, Thoughtsy's into Frog, right?
Yeah, Thoughtsy's into Frog, right? And that's like your only threat here, so I think you can definitely like protect your Frog if I'm against like energy. And like if I take like their discharge or like some way that they could potentially kill Frog, or just like bombardment, which is a really important card in the matchup. And then if I know I'm playing against energy, I have like the pending for disruption, plus like I have like Philology or like Tainted Indulgence, or maybe just like an Atroxa for good draws.
So do you think your deck composition is also like a strong argument for keeping this hand?
I think it's an okay argument. I have a lot of dead draws like Ephemerate, but I also have like a lot of good ones, so I think that there's like... Ephemerate also does protect Frog. I think it's not great here because I have nothing next to draw.
And the thing is, you gotta get value on Frog so quick, because it's very likely to survive from the Thoughtseize, and then it's very likely to get through from Prismatic Ending and the ability to buff. And then it's just...
the fact that you're like reasonable at putting cards in your graveyard.
Yeah.
So when we think through this hand, essentially this falls in the category of strong modern hand because it has both a disruptive spell into a card that creates a long-term advantage with the Frog and some interactions, which obviously is
You're
going to
like,
be
replace a land with literally any spell away from this being.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, I like your assessment there.
Now we discuss if it's better to play turn 1 Ragavan or turn 1 Ocelot Pride. Like if I do go turn 1 a Boreal Grazer, then you might not want to play the Ragavan on turn 1 because it's just going to get blocked.
Yeah.
Turn 1 on the play unknown matchup. Who's playing Ragavan? Who's playing Pride?
I'll play Ragavan.
I'll play Pride.
I'll play Ragavan.
I'm playing Pride.
I'm playing Ragavan.
I think I play Frog.
So the reason I'm playing Ragavan in the blind is mostly one of Ragavan is being legendary is simply too high of a cost with your hand, because most decks in Modern have to spend their turn interacting with the Ragavan. Grazer is a pretty big exception to this when it comes to most forms of interaction. It's not like a 0/3 that actually brick walls your card and makes it into not a threat. It's more like they have to spend their turn 1 Fatal pushing your Ragavan, in which case you get to go Pride into Ocelot. So let's look at like a few cases. Like when we look at the top decks in Modern, there's decks like Forest Energy, where you're almost always going to want to lead on Ragavan, but the biggest punish to that is an opposing Pride on 1. That would be the biggest problem for your hand. Then we can look at a deck like Esper Blink, where usually if you play Ragavan on 1, they need to have removal for it, or else it's going to get through. There's not really any other case where it's bad for you, and then you can, say a deck like Beyond Amulet, like a combo deck where you want to get as quickly as possible to developing the mana.
I'm really surprised you're leading on Ragavan here.
Yeah, tell me.
Well, like, I think that if in general, I think this hand is in pretty good shape if your opponent doesn't kill your turn 1 play. If they kill your turn 1 play, you get to play 1 card on turn 2 unless you draw well. Whereas if they kill your turn 1 Pride, you get to play Ragavan and Pride on turn 2. So you're like insulating against drawing badly and then having a removal spell.
Well, if they don't kill Ragavan, you get to go Pride on turn 2 regardless because of the treasure.
Right. So you're looking at the upside case where they don't kill it or have a blocker. And I feel like I'm on the play with a pretty functional hand. I'm more trying to make the bad case as good for me as possible rather than the good case for me as good as possible. And so I think...
What are the bad cases when you play turn 1 Ragavan that you think are better than if you...
Like I said, basically I think if my opponent has any removal or any blocker, it's better to lead on Pride so that on turn 2 I can play Pride Ragavan.
Well, that's where we disagree. I think if your opponent has removal and you lead on Ocelot Pride, that's much weaker than if you lead on Ragavan, because Ragavan is way worse in the middle stages of the game, especially when you have multiples than Pride.
Actually, if they have removal for the Ragavan, then turn 2 you can still go Pride Ragavan.
If they have a
Whoa!
Or you can dash the Ragavan and then
Yeah.
the treasure.
I forgot the arena was going to come in. Like, right? Okay. Yes.
So, oh yeah, the arena
Because we
is on
just
top.
did right.
Now I'm going to talk about Amulet Titan.
In your hand.
Good luck.
So
I have an amulet in 4 lands and play a cast escape shift. How do I win? No.
okay. Lotus, Mirror, Pool, or Lotus, Bounce, Land, Tolaria, West, you win from there. So Amulet Titan, it uses it has 4 cards, Amulet of Vigor, but also Spelunking, which do similar things, which let my lands come into play untapped. Amulet is better because Amulet is 1 mana, Spelunking's 3 mana. Also, if you have multiple amulets, they can stack the triggers. So if you play a land that enters tapped and you have 2 amulets, the land can untap. You can tap it for mana, and then with the second amulet, you can untap it again. Spelunking, if you have 2 Spelunkings, all the lands will just enter untapped. But then after you have like your amulets or Spelunking, you cast a Titan or an Aftermath Analyst. Titan can help you get the pieces to put your Aftermath Analyst online. And then Aftermath Analyst lets you take lands back from the graveyard. So you do this mainly with Lotus Field. So Lotus Field comes into play. You usually have 2 Lotus Fields, and then they come into play. You make 6 mana. You sack the 2 Lotus Fields and 2 other lands that will generate you more mana. And then Shifting Woodlands becomes a copy of Aftermath Analyst. And then when you sack the Shifting Woodlands for Aftermath Analyst's ability, the Shifting Woodlands will come back again. You'll make infinite mana and can win the game from there.
In the simplest way, it's a very complicated deck that uses a couple of cards to make the game faster, to make a lot of mana a little bit faster, and then it's got things that abuse that to win the game on the spot, basically.
Yeah.
A 34 land deck, right?
32.
32 now? Okay.
32. Yeah. So it's
My
usually
bad.
it's between 31 and 33, generally, but it has changed a
But-
lot. Yeah. This list is 32 lands.
So anyway, this hand.
I would mulligan this hand. It is very slow. You're waiting until turn 3 before you even cast Spelunking. Playing Aftermath Analyst on turn 2 is usually very not great, because especially if they have removal and the Aftermath Analyst just dies, then you need even more mana. I mean, having the Shifting Woodlands in hands helps a little bit, and I think if I'm against energy, I might cast this on turn 2, but I think I would still mulligan this hand because, one, having Lotus Field in your hand is pretty bad, because playing Lotus Field is usually a downside, especially when it's the only land you have, because it makes you sack 2 lands. It's usually a card that I want to get out of my deck using Primeval Titan or Escape Shift. So having it in my hand is like a little bit of a downside. Also, I don't think this hand can win before turn 4 at the earliest, but I don't think it. I think there's some very rare cases that it could even win on turn 4, and so I think it's just too slow against most of the decks in Modern.
I mean, for me, one of the biggest problems is just that you can't not being able to say Analyst to into Spelunking free.
Yeah.
That's just not.
Even that's not
I mean,
good.
if that were on the table, I still probably wouldn't keep. But given that,
I think
I wouldn't keep. Yeah.
The problem is that I think that wouldn't be
Yeah.
particularly close to being good enough anyway.
And this
I mean-
is still like this can't even do that. Like it's.
With this hand evaluating in a vacuum, you're thinking through what is the speed at which my hand executes a thing we're trying to do, which is get to enough mana to cast Escape Shift or Primeval Titan. And this hand kind of fails on that metric. It doesn't do so particularly quickly. And then,
It also doesn't have those cards.
right,
or
it doesn't
any way
have
to
those
get
pieces.
Yeah.
And then there's also this baked-in redundancy of double Spelunking does not particularly work out well. It's kind of a cantrip when you get to 3 mana once you have one in play. So this is a pretty complicated deck. We don't have to go too deep on the mechanics, but
This hand is in the bottom small fraction.
but generally what this hand illustrates is just the idea that when your deck is able to generate a lot of mana really quickly, you don't necessarily have to keep hands that, especially on 7 cards, that don't execute within, turn 3 or turn 4 actually winning the game. So you're going to be mulliganing a lot more of the deck like this than something like Energy where we define loosely if I have a 1 CMC spell, a 2 CMC spell, any other spell in lands, I'm going to keep my hand.
I I think that we should get into games.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into some modern games, and we're going to be here to watch and sort of chat through any sort of things.
After we played some of those modern games, we got into Sealed.
I'm at 13.
Probably that.
I think I'm maybe able to avoid dying.
The double blind code.
Yeah, if you have block.
Yeah, no, there was a way that I did not die. That's good.
Cervelto?
But not with that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Game 3.
I had no way to get
I don't know if it's safe.
Sure.
I mean, it's really big.
Untap.
Alrighty, good luck.
And
That's so fun. I don't like that.
and I can give it +2. And I can give that one +2.
I'm really happy with the Goddess Shrine.
Yeah, I would be too. You know, I don't want to find out
So when
that I've cast tools.
Zero
Sometimes be seen approximately once. And
I'm gonna sack this for
the sad part was that I drew it the turn before you thought.
It was either that or the
Flyer
kill
in your
spell.
flyer.
See, I had 3 lands in hand, or I had like 2 lands and I had like
I kind of
2 lands in hand,
right?
and I played them out of box. I'm like, it's fine, I'll just spot them out there. Nothing bad could happen.
So I was like, I have to do something.
No praise.
For you.
So essentially,
End step, this
you
gets
can
a
think about
counter.
it as if you kill one of my flyers and chump block
The dream might come
you
true.
attack with your flyer and
Surrender.
double block that flyer. This guy always has to chump block your 4/4, so the attack of both is pretty good on board.
I can't believe they reprinted Portable Hole.
Is that?
Yeah.
Technically it's not a beat, but
It's essentially the same.
I was fairly certain I was
Yeah,
the wrong thing.
I did not realize that that's that
Show me what you got.
I was wrong.
Okay.
I mean, oh, good for you, man.
Alright.
Needle spice.
Yeah.
Good one.
Okay.
Land go.
Just to make sure that I wasn't lying.
I did
No, I understand that it wouldn't be
Maybe
done.
you blocked it
Yep.
or are prevented.
I think that this game is
And
about life.
if you hadn't double blocked,
at this point,
then
Yeah.
you're still fine with that
Okay.
because
Yeah,
well,
I'm thinking
well,
doing
it
this
still
on here
triggers
though.
because
I was gonna try to let you think about it first, and then I was like, it's a new card, and I
No,
should
I
probably.
did not realize that it, yeah.
I'll play a comic crawler.
Now I've switched over to playing against Charlie.
And if he kills this, you still have 4 counters on this, which
Right.
means
One
the
of the
4 power
questions
creature
to
you just
ask
played
yourself
can
is,
make a creature
how
monster
often
either
do I
way.
lose because I run out of
So
resources versus
I
how
like
often do
making
I
sure
lose
that
because
like that's
Yeah, I do too. Okay.
I was
Pass
worried
turn.
that you were going to lose the game because you
But
were
as
out of
somebody
time
who,
to
like,
deploy your resources. Hence why I just cast the 2-1 there.
Okay, so like.
Now here's a little portion of the debrief that we do. The full thing will be available at the very end of this video.
Synergies that stood out, anything that you saw that you would like to explore more in the format, feel free to like look through your deck for inspiration about cards you want to talk about or whatever. I want to just like go around and have everyone kind of talk about like any lessons from their games or just whatever comes to mind. Is there anyone who is comfortable going first?
Now we finished with Sealed, and let's talk Standard.
Is everyone familiar with DB?
Yeah.
Here's like the main pieces that I have about Thanks. Appreciate it. One of the things about the standard environment is now that we're losing a full, set of lands, the mana is a big issue in the standard format, meaning you have to be pretty careful about what decks you play because the mana is much worse in colors that lost their pain land mana. So that's a big part of it. But another thing too is in terms of what the decks are doing. This is week 1 of standard, which means we're not super familiar with all of the strategies yet. They're still to be refined. So typically that means we're going to have a lot of decks like the mono green deck, more aggressive decks performing well. One of the goals that we have though is I want everyone to get comfortable playing archetypes they're usually uncomfortable with in standard, where it's a little bit easier than something like modern. So for today, we're going to get familiar playing with the deck that you guys picked or came with whatever you have right now. But I'm going to mix it up for tomorrow and maybe when we do it in 2 days as well, so that you're kind of seeing, after you play a match on one side, what does it look like on the other side of the matchup first day.
Sorry, I have to be talking about mana bases. For our friends that have played a lot of Modern, but have maybe not played a lot of Standard, this is the first time in probably most of your times playing Standard that Standard has shock lands. 2 life generally is going to be more life in this format than it is in Modern. Like in Modern, you know, you don't really think about playing a shock land. You're just like, I'm gonna fetch, I'm gonna shock, and you do that every turn, and it's not super impactful to your plan. Where, you know, the aggressive decks in Standard are pretty strong, and so just as you think about your mana bases, especially after playing Modern, think about how much the 2 damage is and how impactful it is on the game.
Also,
Yes.
relatedly, for those who have played a lot of Modern, in Standard, mana like sucks. Like there's like way less good mana. It's like, and, like you're gonna have a lot of decks that just like really struggle to actually like keep the mana. Like I mean, there's like a great graph right behind you actually. And it's like, so like there are some decks that don't have like fast lands or shock lands in the new Standard, and those color pairs like really are kind of like mostly just basic lands for their mana, which is not good. Like maybe a bit of Starting Town, but like that's not gonna fix a lot of the problems you have. And so you want to be considerate if you're playing like certain color pairs or even like trios. Like hey, like the mana is just not going to be there for a lot of it. You're going to have to really think about, you know, what land drops you're playing, what like, you know, things are going to be if you're going to keep a hand, how likely you are to get another color if you happen to only have one color in your hand.
Yeah, a big part of that to think about when you're playing the games is the primary color of the Verge, the color that it taps for before it's turned on. It is very relevant to how a lot of these decks are built to be able to cast their cards. It gets a little different because the shock lands also turn on the Verges, which is something we didn't have in Standard previously. But that is just a notable thing to think about when we've moved over from Modern, which has much more consistent.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to note too is, in terms of creating a game plan in Standard, I want to get some thoughts from you guys, like especially if you've played a lot of Modern and if you've played some Standard. What is sort of the difference in, you know, when you're playing a game of Standard, how you want to construct, you know, what you want to do versus when you're playing Modern? How does that change? No, yeah.
Standard's kind of like limited, where you just want to like throw about and play some good cards and don't die to threats.
I actually think that was an excellent explanation.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really, really effective.
Yeah, I think in Modern it's like you can have a land with like four spells and 3 lands, but like you still mulliganing it because you're not doing the specific game plan, whereas Standard it's a lot more broader in what the decks are trying to do.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Like also like in a similar way, like every Standard or every Modern deck kind of has like at least one kind of broken thing it can do, which often is not the case for like Standard decks. Often Standard decks are more fair there and more focused on just like staying alive and winning a like slower, even if, you know, a fast game but a slower game compared to Modern. They're more like, you know, balanced and like chaotic or less chaotic game, where Modern often, like after 3 turns, it's like either done or it's getting there.
And one thing to piggyback off that idea is, in Modern, are you guys familiar with this concept of inevitability or who's favored in a long game? The general idea there just being, usually when you have a Modern deck, a strategy is favored in a long game, and in a matchup, it's not going to change that much based on, you know, your strategy is so good at winning a long game that it's, you know, almost always going to win a long game if you're playing Eldrazi. When you're playing Standard, though, something like the mono-green aggro deck, or ramp deck, whatever you want to call it, can both win a very quick game and a very long game depending on the circumstances of your hand and what you have going on. So I want you guys to kind of conceptualize and think through, as we're going through the exercises, where does your deck default at trying to be effective? Like, where are you going to be very good in the early game with mono-green, but, you know, in a deck like, I don't know, blue-red cauldron like he has here, like have a very good late game, and then how does that change based on the specific hands that you guys have in context? So that's kind of a higher level concept, but I want to introduce that because I think Standard is kind of the best environment to work on that as a fundamental skill.
On the same vein, one of the other things that we'll talk about a little bit more in depth probably tomorrow and the next day is like key turns and key things the deck do. So like an example of this in Standard is for like the blue-black mid-range deck, the turn that Kaido can be played. Those are pretty pivotal to how some of the decks play and you know, how a lot of the decks win. And so when you're playing a specific deck, finding those kind of key turns where you're like, oh, this is a turn where I would really like to resolve this thing, or you know, I really want to stop them from doing this, you know, I want to kill their creatures so that they can't attack when I can't block when they have Kaido up, is a big part of learning what the decks do in Standard.
So, why don't we get into some gameplay, and we're gonna, again, kind of observe and chat with you guys, but I really want this to be a little bit more hands-on with the coaches, able to, like, instruct if there's key turns, because unlike Modern, like, there are gonna be some key turns that define a game, like, much later stages than in Modern typically has, so let's give that a try, and, yeah, ask us if you have any questions.
We played a bit of Standard and then ended off our evening with a nice arena cube draft hosted by Onique. Now, I'm going to show the rest of the sealed debriefing video. Thank you so much, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Sealed debrief.
Synergies that stood out, anything that you saw that you would like to explore more in the format, feel free to like look through your deck for inspiration about cards you want to talk about or whatever. I want to just like go around and have everyone kind of talk about like any lessons from their games or just whatever comes to mind. Is there anyone who is comfortable going first?
Yeah, I can. Okay. So LG Acolyte was really good. It like gave me cards, gave me life, and if a non-land permanent left the battlefield or a spell was warped, I get a 2/2. So even if I like had a 2/2 from the previous turn, swung with the token, and it died, I got another one, which seemed really strong.
Were there any cards, sorry not to cut you off, Carmen,
Yeah.
but just prompting you, but were there any cards that were sort of unintuitive that were impressive for you? Like, yeah, that is a very strong card, but things that were
Unintuitive?
Maybe you weren't sure of it going in, but it kind of changed over
Or
time.
a thing where like it felt like this was the right context for it, or could be strong in the right context, but you didn't have it.
There was like a 3-mana Thoughtseize effect that was, I wasn't gonna include that. And it cost 2 less if a non-land permanent left the battlefield, but that one was really, really good. So
Did that feel so? Did that feel like it was good in a way that would be unique to sealed, or in a way that you would like in draft? And the reason I ask is, in general, since more rares are opened per person in sealed, people have more bombs, and so that kind of effect, like Thoughtseizes in general, are stronger in sealed. And so, this was good because I would pay any amount to not have to deal with a bomb, or was it good because you were able to like trigger the void in a way that made it kind of more generically tempo positive, where you could spend 1 mana to like disrupt their play or something like that?
yeah, I think I could like with the deck, it was easier to turn on the void.
Like, were you usually playing? How much mana would you say you spent on average to cast it?
Like, I cast it twice for 1, I think, and then once for 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you like? Is it a card that you think you would like try to have in a draft perspective?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Robbie, you wanna go?
So I found, like, my first and biggest takeaways, I found this card Nutrient Block, which is 1 mana food. It's indestructible, but that's basically flavor text. It has like the food sacrifice ability, and then when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you draw a card. I was kind of not sure on this card, but I found it to be really strong and really synergistic. Like, there's a lot of cards like Swarm Color, which can sacrifice an artifact to draw a card, or I just have to sacrifice an artifact to buff it. And if you're ever doing that, it's going to be fantastic. And it's also just good at filling roles. And it's like, there's a very synergistic card. I think it's not like the sort of card that every single deck's going to want. Like, if you're playing like a red-white aggro deck, I don't think it's going to be particularly up your alley. But I think a lot of decks are going to find it useful if you have like artifact synergy, if you have like sacrifice synergy, if you have any of that. I found Depressurize to be a very good removal spell for me. Like, it's like all the removal spells, always going to be pretty good. But actually, I found it to be efficient and good and quite
I want to call out
stackable.
something with that card that I saw in one of your games, which is a lot of the removal spells that are based on like killing a creature with low power. If your opponent has a big creature, they can't do anything, and that at least like stacks with itself, where you were able to like use 2 of them to kill a big creature at one point.
Yes, that was helpful. I found like some of the cards I found like a little bit more awkward there is I was excited about this card, but I couldn't actually get it super to work. There's some clear stuff here with like sacrifice.
Which card,
with
Robbie?
it.
Sorry?
The Peregrine Beckoner. It's 1 to black to warp it, and it gives a creature +2/+0, and then the not dead after all sort of effect, but it comes back when it dies, and then you can pay for 4 to black. And I found that there's a lot of theoretical good things you could do. Obviously, if you imagine using that on a virus beetle, then you sack it, you get all that value. But then I found that it requires a lot of setup there, and it often was kind of too clunky to work out for me, and so I couldn't really get that to work. But it was also a small sample size, so it might just not have actually been. It might be a great card, but just didn't happen to work out in the few times that I had it. So.
I think that you're right that in general the rate on that card isn't very good.
But yeah. Overall, I thought a lot of these cards were good. Weapons manufacturing, it's a rare, but it's kind of a weird one. I found it could be good, but it's a very specific card, and it's often not going to do a lot. In the circumstances, if you can ever really sacrifice 1 munition, you're in pretty good shape there. But it's often going to not really do anything, and so you want to be pretty sure. If you think your deck is
in the deck that you played, was it good or bad overall for you?
I think good overall, but not great. But I think
And how many things did you have that let you sacrifice the artifact?
I had 5 or so things to let me sacrifice the artifact, and 6 things that can make the artifact.
Okay.
And so, but I think you want to have quite a few things that can both trigger it and or
Right.
defeat
It's
the
interesting
sacrifice
that
it.
you need to jump through 2 different hoops to
Yeah.
make it work, not just one,
And
and
so-
it can be hard to balance.
And so if you can really get going with that, I think it can be really great. But I found that to be a bit clunky. But then I think the red black sacrifice value deck certainly has a lot of potential there. Where Nutrient Block's a great card, but even in general, you can do a lot of good stuff with if you take baseline cards like Melded Moxite, which is it's a card that you get the Tormenting Voice effect. You discard a card you brought 2, and 1 to red for that is a little below where you want to be, but then if you can sacrifice that for value, really any
It
value at all.
itself is an object, so you're
And
up an
so-
object, and then you can also turn it into a creature.
You can turn it into a creature, you can sack it to get something +2/+0, you can sack it to draw a card, and same stuff with a virus beetle. There's a lot of, it's not actually too hard with landers also to get stuff onto the battlefield that you can sacrifice for value, and so I think the deck actually does have some real legs there. Territorial Control, final thing, great in limited, at least in sealed, great sealed. It could it digs, it always hits. It basically means you're always top decking something useful, because if you top deck a land, you're guaranteed to hit the spell, and if you top deck a spell, well, that's kind of self-explanatory. And so it's great in sealed and slower stuff, but you want to be careful about it, because I did also have at least 1 game where struggled with my opponent played a 2-drop and a 3-drop and a 4-drop, and I'm sitting here with it, and it's I really wish there was removal spell or a cheaper creature or something.
Okay, great. Dana?
Yeah, overall, I felt like my deck was just it had a nice curve. I think some cards that stood out to me that were really, really good. Starwinder, I thought it would be good, and it was really, really good. I think over the course of the draft, it drew me 10 or so cards, if not more than that. And it's just
10 cards in 1 game.
yeah. No, I think it'll only drew me 8 cards in one game as the max.
5 against me.
Yeah. So it was
against
a
me.
lot. So I felt like it was really, really good. The Sunset Saboteur, I was very skeptical on it, just because it was it's so fragile when it is blocked, but because it has menace, it's it's usually 2 for winning. Even if it makes some creatures bigger, I think it's really good in a deck that has a good amount of removal that can remove the creature that you put the counter on, and my deck had a fair amount of ways to either remove the creatures or just had flyers that could fly over the creatures.
Yeah, to kind of add on there, when I was playing against it, I found that the +1/+1 counter is less bad for the player with the Saboteur than you might expect, just because the ability to control where it goes gives you a lot of potential there. If you can make sure it lands on something that you're either already planning to kill, or it's not going to be as scary if they have multiple creatures.
Also, notably, it works well with an aura that makes the creature not work.
Oh yeah, the -5, -0.
Yeah. And then also the Centurion Voidborn was like really good because like if you made like lander tokens and then you sacrifice the lander tokens, then you would drain them, and so it's just like it has so many ways to drain them. And like the warp also can like work for helping trigger void in a very cheap way. Some cards I felt like I think you really need to be able to make them work, and I didn't feel were necessarily the best in my deck. Was Mech and Shield Mate. Like I felt like I could sometimes fire it up, trigger it, but sometimes it was just like a 2-mana 3/2 that didn't do like a whole ton. And I think even with like a lot of artifacts, it might not be like super strong. I think like if you're lacking on 2-drops, it can be like fine filler there, but I wasn't a big fan of playing this card. And then the Self-Craft Mechan, it's not great if you just have a lot of artifacts, like if you had like a lot of these, because like you want to sack the artifacts, it won't let you sack a creature, it's only an artifact. So like I felt a lot of times I had this in my hand and there was no artifacts I wanted to sack, and it was just like a 4-mana 3/4, which is like not super great.
I think that one really wants the new treatment.
Yeah. This would be really good. So
I'd say the first thing is that my MVP was definitely Starfield Vocalist. Card is absurdly good, especially in my deck. Like doubling use social engineering, which is my next point, and then I just had a lot of triggers that worked really well with. Obviously, it's not great if you don't have anything that cares about entering the battlefield at all, but it was really good in my deck. Use social engineering is infinitely better than Chocobo Racetrack in literally every way. Like warping it was really relevant early, and just allowing me to like get a body in my like otherwise a bit slow deck was extremely helpful. And then obviously doubles with the Vocalist, which won me I think 3 games. Gigastorm Titan, I did not believe in this card. A 5-mana 4/4, it costs 2 mana if you cast another spell, but my deck was kind of built to be able to do that on like turn 3 or 4. And so again, it was just like a card that was just good in my deck. Orbital Plunge was really good, which kind of surprised me. Like it's just a regular sorcery speed kill spell, but the lander token was like extremely relevant and fixed my mana, which a lot of the time needed it. So just very good. All Fate Scroll. Sam told me to play this. It's very good. It drew me like 10 cards over the course of a few games. It's just like really good. It helps me fix my mana as well. Like getting double blue and double green is really important to my deck, and this just fixes everything. As far as like bad cards, Cryo Shatter. Initially it reads as just like a kill spell. It means that it can't attack. It's a lot worse than that, because a lot of times my opponents would just like sack it or like just like have a way for it to generate value. So it's not just a kill spell, and it often just like leaves them with something they can still get for value. So it was like okay, it wasn't great. The card that was really bad was Atmosphere Greenhouse, which I think is really bad if you're not in like the green-white counters archetype. Like a lot of the time it's just like a 5-mana, put 3 counters on your creatures and then just like sit there. And like I never really had the time to like actually station it, and even then like it's 8 power to get a 5/4 flying trample. So I just felt like it wasn't that good.
I think that with that card, you kind of want both some amount of like stuff that cares about plus and counters, but more importantly, you want a lot of the cards that like give you lots of bodies for a single card. Like I think it really likes the white common warp thing that makes it 1/1, because like that can be 3 bodies. That's like going to give you 2 or 3 bodies in one card, and you really want some like more than natural amount of going wide to get some implemented value out of that.
Just like felt like it was just 5 mana, put 2 counters on my creatures, which is just not good.
One thing that you said I wanted to highlight too is with this the Mana Rock, Mana Rock says All Fate Scroll. Traditionally, this type of card shows up in most of the limited environments these days. Just a 3-mana Mana Rock that adds mana of any color. And the common issue is that you play that in order to accelerate your game plan so that you can play a 5-drop on turn 4 or start, double spelling as early as turn 4 as much as you can. But the drawback is you don't always have a way to convert it into a real piece of material. If you flood out, you run into issues. And the way that this card performs so well is 1, there's a ton of ways of using a random artifact if you don't have time to spend 7 mana on something, and 2, simply putting 7 mana, draw 3 cards on your card that's accelerating you is quite a high upside compared to what we're
Well,
used
yeah,
to.
like ramp and card draw go really well together, and this card just does it all in one card.
It's, I think, probably one of the best 3-mana rocks I've seen in a while.
I think it might be like yeah. I mean, it's like in contention for like best all time. It's like comparable to like Coalition Relic or whatever.
And keep in mind in this set, just a general observation I want to make before you guys continue that. One of the things I saw a lot as I was looking through games is, yeah, these spaceships were just hard to crew a lot of the time if you didn't put enough creatures in your deck. So I would be very cognizant of what your creature count is when you're playing spaceships in your deck. Like, I've seen this in a few decks that you guys drafted or built and sealed, and also just generally observing format. But archetypes like blue-black really struggle with crewing really big vehicles because your creature sizing does not match
Yeah, I
what
was
you
going
need
to
to
say
reach.
it's a little
So-
bit different than creature count. It's creature
Creature
composition.
sizing.
Like the how much power they have really matters, especially with the high creatures.
Exactly. So, I mean, keep that in mind as we go on, but it's generally relevant to note that if your spaceship doesn't generate half a card plus in value at its face, you know, when you play the card, you should be a lot more skeptical unless your other creatures support it. That's all.
No?
Like, this card, a lot worse than I thought. It's really bad.
Do you want to say what it is and what was bad about it?
So, like, it's a 1-mana enchantment that exiles a non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until it dies. It's one of those cards, and it's only 1 mana, but
Turns out there aren't that many things that cost 2 or less that you care about.
yeah, there's not many good cards that cost 2 or less. And so that card was really bad. And this Weft Blade Enhancer was actually really good. Surprisingly, it doesn't look very good on rate.
What was good about it?
Because you could warp it for turn 3 to push more damage, and it did very well on turn 6. And like, this card is really good because he gets a lot of value. If there's anything like really bad, like a creature that wasn't really meant to be a body, like say a virus beetle, you can just attack and replace it.
So, just because we had a conversation about it, can I add a few notes from what we talked about? One thing that Noah was saying was, like, when we were playing the games, he had a lot of times where he's playing black-white without a ton of creatures.
We're going swimming.
Without a ton of creatures that could easily get through on the ground, and so both of these cards kind of played a role in making it so his opponent either couldn't block that effectively, or the Titan made it so attacking and chump attacking wasn't that bad if you were pushing damage. So it seemed to me, Noah, that like one of the issues your deck ran into is the board stalled out and your deck didn't do much, right? So would you say that's like an issue with your specific deck, or maybe black-white? What were you thinking about that?
I think that black-white's bad at card advantage.
At a card advantage?
Yeah. So I think that for black-white, you want to have a lot of like warp cards so that you never run out of stuff to do, and more card draw. Like,
and didn't
for
you say
drafting.
this was the last card we also saw that really overperformed, right?
Which card?
Oh,
Oh, the Wedge Light Rammer. It's a 4-mana spacecraft that makes a 2/2. And then you can stay, and then at 9+, it gets flying first strike and is a 3/4. It's good because you get a 2/2. And then you can use that 2/2 to attack and block, but most of the time, the 2/2 just works on the spacecraft. And say like your first turn, you don't do anything. Your second turn, you play like a 2-mana 2/2. Your third turn, and you play a 3-drop with 3 power. So then when you play this card, you can get it up to like 7 counters, assuming you curve pretty good. And then the next turn you can just crew with the robot, and you can snap for some damage. Because it's good at blocking and attacking.
Did you think that flying was good in your games?
Yeah.
So you have to go in for 2.
I'm currently hoping. I'm asking a question.
Captain,
Then we'll give you another 5 minutes and you'll have to go in for 3 minutes.
I've been told every 5 minutes I have to go back in the closet. That was the only way she would let me leave.
Alright. Well, thank you, Noah. Yeah, I mean, I know that the last thing I would say here is when we saw this white-black deck in action, I was watching some Nova's games, it did seem like when the ground gunned down, having access to at least some form of evasion to get through mattered more here than it would have in something like blue-black, where you don't really care as much about the ground being gunned down. And the big green creatures seem like a huge issue for specifically the white creatures when you run into how do I make sure I can compete on the ground at some stage. Well, you might never get a chance past turn 6 or something. So.
Sorry, I remembered my question now that I'm not being heckled. Did you feel like flying was particularly good? Like your opponents did not have a lot of like flying things that were bigger than it, or maybe there weren't a lot of reach creatures,
Yeah,
or
there aren't a lot of reach creatures, and most of the flying in this set is spacecrafts. So you want to play a lot of spacecrafts, but if you gum up your deck with spacecrafts, you won't have enough creatures to man the spacecrafts. So try to find reach creatures. Is good.
No.
That does seem like a tough balance to try and find, but you have to figure out the good mixture of everything that such that you don't end up either with no way to block flyers or with like 10 spacecraft.
yeah. Also, if a lot of the flyers are spacecrafts that require time to, turn on, then if there are some number of cheap flyers in the set, those might have a little bit more value because they might be able to do a little bit more damage earlier and force time going into the spacecrafts.
Nora, do you want to talk about your deck?
I definitely think the spacecrafts are really funky. Like, I did not like playing these. The only ones I actually liked was like pretty much just the Lumen class Brigade, because I can literally just tap a 2-drop I play on turn 1 and then everyone gets +1/+1, so that was pretty great. This one, the only reason it was any good was because I have some stuff with landfall and that gets more like damage and HP the more lands I have. So since I like never drew lands, my land drops are horrible. So if I played this, I would actually get a landfall trigger, and that like never happened otherwise. And then for this one was just kind of bad. Like I don't know when I would want to spend 7, and this mechanic just never works. Like this one didn't help me at all because it has no ETB.
Which one, Nora? Am I saying the name?
The Siege class Siege ship, because it has no ETB trigger, and then its thingy is when you get 7 like counters on it, and like I never did that, and I didn't like it. I liked the Harmonious Grove Strider thingy.
That card's good.
It was nice. It kind of worked. And then I thought the Might Form Harmonizer would be better, but again, I kind of never got landfall triggers, and so it didn't really do a lot. But they were both like good cards. They helped get big things on the board that people were scared of. And then one thing I was confused about why this was even in this set is the Dauntless Scrapbot. When this creature enters, exile each opponent's graveyard and then create the lander token, which I guess makes sense. But when do you ever want to exile a graveyard?
I think the relevant part is mostly the lander token.
Yeah, but like, I don't know.
It's mostly just an extra line of text they get to it that does something sometimes.
And there's a lot of decks that care about having artifacts. Like I had 2 of them in my deck, and I thought they were really good in my deck.
I think the card is super good. I think the graveyard thing doesn't matter much, but the card is
it's
really
just
strong.
the fact that it's an artifact creature and it kind of sits there, I guess.
I mean, it's mostly that it's a card that's inherently 2-for-1 in the sense that if you get
Well,
to
the 2-for-1
mana,
is fixing. It's a 3-power creature for the purpose of like killing your spaceships.
Okay.
Actually,
And then
Yeah,
it's
I just-
conveniently sometimes good against, there's a number of like reanimate spells in the format.
Yeah, I was wondering that because I didn't
It's just a
see any of
bonus.
those, and then it didn't do anything in my deck.
so it was actually, I don't think you happened to see it, but you played that against me and it actually slowed me down quite a bit.
Really?
So I had a 2 and a black card where I can like sack an artifact and get back a creature with like mana value 5 or less.
Oh.
But you like exiled all my good targets for it, so I like
Oh.
never played it. But I don't think
I
you
didn't do
realized that
that
it actually stopped me
consciously,
because
And like this
Yeah,
rare.
and I was really confused
That
about why that
rare is
existed.
good to exile my graveyard.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I had a card that would return like a creature or artifact from my graveyard to my hand, that would have been bad against that. So it's probably one of those things that it
When
doesn't
it's
always
good,
come
you don't
up,
know
but
that
when
it's
it's
good,
good.
it's stopping them from playing a card, and they don't play the card.
It's like a sideboard card.
Yeah.
Well, no. That's the thing about it is it's not a sideboard card, right? Because the reason you
'Cause
play
it's
it is
still
just for the
super
body and the
fun.
lander token. It's just incidental hate that like is hard for you to know how much the incidental
Yeah,
hate
I just
part matters.
figured that
But
if
the
it
card
was-
itself is just like such a good rate for the other
Yeah.
parts that you don't really need to worry about what it's.
I figured that if it was in the set, there would be a lot more reanimate stuff like existing.
That's fair.
But
Like
I was.
Dusk
I don't know.
I think it's mostly like, just to conceptualize it a bit, when you have a set, you want some ways of interacting with a graveyard as well. And so even though there's not a ton of graveyard recursion elements in the set, it's nice to be able to print an uncommon that has graveyard hate attached to it, because then, okay, you can interact in a way that most of the other cards don't. So
Yeah.
that's why I would think about it. Thank you.
Spaceships are weird.
Yeah, they are.
Alright, Ricky?
So one thing that I really liked was Possibility Technician. It's a Kabu Artificer, 3 for 3 for 3, classic red card. ETB, exile the top card of your library for as long as that card remains exiled. You can play it if you control a Kabu. I had 4 other Kabus in my deck, so even if the 3/3 got killed immediately, because it's a pretty good card, then I normally had an answer so that I could still play that card. And I got a few good things from exiling. Another thing I liked was the Anti-Causal Vestige, the Eldrazi. It's 6 for a 7/5. It has things when it leaves the battlefield. It was just immediate threat that opponents had to deal with or take
Warp
7
4.
damage. Yeah, with Warp 4 as well. I did keep forgetting about that because I keep forgetting about Warp.
The one about when it leaves is you just put a creature from your hand onto the
Well,
battlefield.
it's
Didn't
a
you like draw a
permanent.
card?
Yeah, draw a
It's
card.
a draw card and put a permanent, so you can put like land
Yeah.
stuff.
Is it less than or equal?
Less than or equal.
Less than or equal to the number of lands you control.
It's kind of good.
Oh wow, so even on turn 4, you draw
When
a
you
card
warp
and
it
put
for
a 4
4, it's
up and
not
play.
mana negative, draw a card.
That's
And
crazy.
then
Yeah,
you
card's
realize
very
this
good.
later
Yeah.
is a big threat. It also
Yeah.
draws a card.
It's a really good card.
Yeah.
Yeah, on this list it says it's an A-.
It's also nice in like when we start talking about drafting, it's colorless, and so
Right.
it doesn't make you commit to a path. They always have a little more value.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Another one was Sothera the Super Void. It was the legendary enchantment, mythic, rare, 2 and 2 black. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent chooses a card they control and exiles it. That's just a good card. It's very specific. I think it would be better in a constructed format, but in limited, it's just really good, especially because I had a
Yeah, that
bunch of
card's
creatures.
good.
Yeah, I had a bunch of creatures. yeah, and then being able to steal opponents' creatures was especially really good.
Yeah, I think a couple of times we did the combo of these two, where like we would play this whenever a creature died. Each opponent would have to sacrifice a creature, and then we would this is not the right card. This one.
Yeah.
And then we would use the like sacrifice an artifact or creature to destroy target creature.
Wait,
We
isn't
would-
that super awkward?
That's bad, right?
Because they just have the thing you targeted.
Well,
You scammed me.
That's bad.
Wait a second.
Welcome to learning a new limited format.
it's a new
Wait,
set.
how did you get
Yeah, 'cause
scammed?
it's
They tried to compose my creatures and I just
Why
let
did
it
you
out.
let them?
I didn't read the cards. They told me
That seems
I
like
mean, they're
you
not allowed
actually
to
scammed
suggest
yourself.
that you sacrifice the other one.
It was not a suggestion.
You played well.
It
I was told my cards are dead and I die.
Yeah, well, should have read the cards.
You read how many lines of text?
That's not true. We killed you the following turn.
Over under on 10.
It actually has like only
Lines
like
and
9.
cards combined?
All the lines.
It's only at 9.
It's okay.
I mean, there's also a space in between, but like.
So, it's a paragraph.
Legendary.
This is where we learn.
Yeah, okay.
We should count that.
Base cover of the entire set.
But I do also think. I mean, maybe not that specific thing, but I do think it's a sort of card where Sothera is like fine on its own, but if you build around it, like if you sacrifice random tokens or
It would
whatever,
have been very good in
it can become really incredible. And so the more sacrifice, if you look at like Claw and Hunter actually, that's a perfect example where if you have that and then Sothera and you can attack and pay the 2. That's basically just like that's an incredible amount of value there because you're turning your one drop and paying 2 mana into 2 of their creatures, no matter how you slice it, really. And if they don't kill the Ragavan, then you get to do that again. And so, like, that
If
seems
they only
really
have one
strong.
creature, they're kind of locked.
Yeah.
Like the 2 creatures at once, or kill your guy or whatever.
And so it's just brutal there with like you also get like virus beetles, anything that sacks creatures. It just seems really strong.
Virus beetles sack creatures.
Well, no, virus beetle is just a good creature to sack into that and to get like double value out of
Wait,
it.
4 mana butcher is now here.
Kind of, but it can't be killed, which makes it stronger.
And it has some other text.
Yeah, and it can also like get back an opponent's creature if
It
they
is a
don't.
mythic rare, yeah.
Alright
That's
guys,
all I'll say.
are we wrapped up with limited here?
Magic Camp Day 1 is fully complete. Thank you so much everybody for watching this video.